All right, we are starting to record our meeting here just so we can save it for the YouTube archives. Welcome to the EAA 234 July meeting. Chief host, Alex Bloye.
You're recording?
Yes.
Good. All right.
We're good.
First of all, I'd like to introduce our hosts, Andy and Bob Denton and Eric Newper. Pretty good view of the Denton Air. We had about $1,500 in the bank. We got a office over here in the PA building. In order to get in, is the power frequency 124.2. The place is air conditioned, pretty nice. We didn't have it there because we can't get people spread out enough. Kristen just found out that our landlord wants $200 a month. We're going to try and negotiate that down. We're also got a fat ultralight. We've had the empennage covered. Trying to get the two pairs and paint. Haven't been able to get that covered. John Stephanie Sprague has 11 aircraft going in there. So I'm going to try and find somebody else to do it. If you know anybody who does fabric, let me know. Nice to get that thing sold and get that in perspective. Right? So, tonight we're having Alex Bloye speak with us. Alex is the man in charge of the flight academy over Flight College. He's gone through some pretty wild times with the changes with COVID. So, meeting is yours, Alex.
Hold on, sir.
I'm going to unmute. There we go.
There you go.
All right. Thank you. I can only hear Christian, so he can relay questions. I really appreciate the invite, and now I'm regretting not just driving over as I see you all sitting there. So I should have just come over, and I apologize. But I'm happy to take any of your questions, and yeah, I'll plan on attending the next meeting just to say hi, so you can see me in person and I can see you. But yeah, our college, the college, officially grounded the fleet at 11 a.m. on March 16th, 2020. We had a very, very short notice. I got a call from the vice presidents at the college, and it was within an hour we grounded the fleet and sent everyone home. It took a couple days for reality to sort of settle in that we had just grounded our fleet. We've been in operation for 53 years, and the only other time we've done that is 9/11, and so we're kind of left to ponder what the future might look like at that point. Being pilots, though, we weren't going to just sit there. So almost immediately, starting on the next week, we started planning our return. It turns out there are only a handful of departments at the college and in higher ed really that took such an aggressive approach in planning. We found it to be our only purpose for 3 months. And we started with researching regulations. So we became experts in CDC regulation policy, state regulation policy, and that became our full-time job. So my team of managers and my chief pilots and chief mechanics started writing a policy handbook, and it is now our guideline on how we do everything. But in realizing what we had to do was take an operation that it had evolved over 53 years and completely start over. Because we are a public school, we're a public institution, and so any guideline, any rule, any mandate you're seeing out there, we are obligated to follow it to a T, and that's what we did. So For 3 months, we wrote and researched, and we ended up with a 20-page document that is our COVID-19 policy and procedures handbook. During that time, I had the opportunity to meet virtually with almost every aviation academic leader in the country, and it seemed like we all landed on a pretty similar page. The last survey that went out, all the schools that are open right now in academia, about 90% of them are doing exactly what we're doing, and I can go through some of that. And we landed in a spot where 3 weeks ago we were able to get the green light from our administration and the state to go ahead and start opening back up for flight training. Happy to report that all but one of our instructors returned, and about 90% of our students, and we are full again for fall and spring semester coming up into 2021. So we're getting back on track. We're very hopeful for the future, and it has been a very interesting ride. So it's been kind of crazy. So back to March 16th, we started writing our policies. We ended up with a NAT chart of about 200 task line items that we had to go through, as minute as putting tape on the floor to direct people where to go, and all of that. We sort of turned our flight school into a Costco, and drove people through it. And like I said, a few weeks ago, we started phasing back in the flight instructors. We got them the first week, we got them current and proficient and comfortable with the new procedures. We moved everything online that we could. So we no longer do briefings, ground schools, anything face-to-face. Everything is done remotely. They sign in remotely using a Zoom meeting. And then we invite one person at a time into the offices to check out the aircraft, go through a health screening. They're then issued a Tyvek wristband, and they're cleared out on the ramp for their flight lessons. Everybody's been pretty good about it. They realize that right or wrong, or regardless of what my opinion or my agenda is, it's a policy. And as pilots, we're used to following regulations and policies, even if we don't necessarily understand them all the time. But that's how we're looking at this. It's a new policy for us to go through all of this, and we're making it work. We are requiring masks in the cockpit. About 90% of the academic programs in the country are doing the same thing. We're not requiring face shields. They seemed inefficient, and they were more of a hazard than anything. But we are requiring masks. There's been a few instances of students who are uncomfortable with that, but we're working through it and making it work, and they're starting to get into their comfort level. It's starting to become a reality for them. We are flying full block 7 days a week, and like I said, most of it is mostly communication on dispatch, and all of the like is done remotely. So the big piece that we've been really drumming over is, and all of the people in this room, I'm sure, can relate to this as at a point in their lives when they've been in an airport or found that special school or that flight instructor, and there is that camaraderie there. There's that community. That's why you're all here. We're trying to rediscover that. We always thought that NMC was a very special place, just like a lot of people think their school is a very special place. But we aren't hanging out at the dispatch desk anymore, and we're not having lunch out in the hangar, and we're not having coffee together, and we're not able to have our doors open just to have students walk in and, hey, I need advice on this, that, or the other. So we're trying to find what our community looks like, and trying to rediscover that, redefine it, and take every opportunity we can to celebrate even the smallest of victories, to remind the students that that we are still a community, even though we are behind these masks. We're still very much an aviation community. So that's kind of where we've landed so far. It's been interesting everybody's wondering where the future of aviation is. And like I said, I've had the opportunity to speak with a number of aviation leaders over the past few months. We've really banded together, and it seems like everybody has the same theory. Now it's all theory and it's all speculation, but when we shut down in March, we were in the midst of a historic pilot shortage. We all know about it. We've all read about it, and we were all celebrating it in one way or another. And all this time, if you take a couple pieces of this equation, one, the pilot shortage still exists. So pilots are retiring even at a faster rate than they were before. So you're getting a lot of buyouts, you're getting a lot of early retirements, and just the wave of this generation of retiring is happening right now. 20 into 21 was the fiscal year of the peak of retirement. And so quietly, you have an entire generation of pilots leaving the system. And for the past 4 months, no one in the world has been making new pilots. Nobody has been graduating new pilots. So when we do return, and I'm very confident that we will as an industry, it might look different, but I think it's going to be a very strong return. I think in the pilot's favor. I think you're going to find the shortage will return when we get beyond COVID and people are comfortable flying again. And when the sun rises on the ramp again, people will find that there are no pilots there, and the system will be back in our favor. So I'm very hopeful, and I'm not the only one that's seeing that. I've talked to Embry-Riddle and Western and Ohio State and all kinds of people, domestic and international. A lot of our airline partners are all saying, yeah, the short term is going to be a little rough for hiring. That there's obviously you're seeing furloughs already, but in the long-term game, into 21 and beyond, I think it's going to be a pretty fantastic return. So that's my optimistic point of view of this. But it took a while to get there. We were 3 months of wondering if we were going to get back in the airplane, and we're really excited to be doing that today. So we flew all day today. So if we could, if there are questions or things that you'd like me to discuss, this is a painfully awkward meeting of, I can't interact with you. And so if Christian can forward some, if there are questions or more topics that you'd like me to cover, I'd love to do that.
Any questions for Alex I can relay at this point? No question. Where are the students like living at the moment? Where are they bunking for the most part? Are they are dorms still open?
Good question. Yeah, the dorms are still open. The housing remained open throughout the shutdown. We were committed to finishing our spring students first. So that's what we did before we welcomed any new students back to the ramp or to the line. We were committed to finishing our current students. So we worked through that. We got them all in a plan and got them ready to go. A lot of our students went home, and then as much as we could, we gave them a heads up to start returning. So we really didn't have 100% assurance that we were going to return until just a few days before we made the announcement. We were just waiting on the state to move us to phase 5 and face-to-face instruction, and get us back to where we needed to go. So we were really on a short turn. The beauty of what we had done, though, is that all the planning went into place, and everyone knew exactly what they had to do when we did turn the light back on. And so the students had a little bit of a heads up because we phased in. We got the instructors current first, and that took about a week and a half, 2 weeks. And during that time, students were getting called and they were saying, okay, start getting ready, start hitting the books, start looking at currency and, airport badges and medicals and all those things. And they started migrating back to where we are. And in doing that, sort of quarantine themselves. And most of our students were really just sitting at home anyway. And we're pretty safe with it. All of our international instructors, we had 5 international instructors, actually stayed on campus in quarantine the entire time. They really didn't have the ability to leave the country and then come back in. So we didn't have any concerns there. And actually the same thing with our 2 international students, currently 2 international students, they stayed in country in student housing. Our couple difficult things we had to do. We did have to temporarily furlough all of the flight instructors and all of our supplemental crew. So all of our line crew and dispatchers, it came out to about 50 people. That was one of the hardest weeks that my managers and I have ever had. It was really difficult to tell these young folks that we were going to let them go, and that we would call them as soon as we could. We did everything we could for each and every one of them, and we're fortunate to be able to pay them for at least half of the quarantine. We kept them on as long as we could, and then finally that coffer ran out. So they were on furlough for about a month and a half. So everybody was we've called back everyone at this point. Everyone is pretty excited to be back. We're using CDC guidelines for health screens. We're not recording the information, but we're doing just everyone that walks in the door, including myself, every single day is checked in. You do a temperature check, and then you go through the CDC questions, and you're given like I said, you're given a Tyvek band to clear out of the ramp. And then masks are worn at all times unless outside, greater than 6 feet away. And other than that, though, masks are donned at all time. One other piece that we did, obviously there's a complexity in international affairs at this point in immigration and things like that. You're seeing a lot of that in the news. I'm sure many of you are aware we have a pretty robust summer program where we welcome aerospace engineering students from the UK over to the US for a flight experience. They sort of backfill spots when our students go home to work pizza shops and hang out with their families. And so this year, first year in 10 years, we've canceled that international program. We hope to resume next year, but again, there's many layers to that story, and many decisions have to be made by numerous countries before we can start welcoming back international students, or before we can even go over there to recruit. So we're kind of on a hold on our international programs until we get further clearance and guidance on that one.
That was actually my question about your British exchange over the summer. So.
Yeah, between the lack of we love having the Brits over. It's so much fun. It's a great international exchange for our students as well as them, and we have a blast with those students. And they're not taking any spots. They're really, they serve a purpose for us as much as we do for them, and it's been a fantastic program. That was a difficult one to cancel. We had 23 students who had prepaid for flight programs this summer that we had to decline, and some of those students had saved for many years to come and fly in the United States. So between that and the lack of the air show, it has been a very bizarre, a really bizarre summer. But we're happy to just start hearing the airplanes again.
Yeah, It was a very boring 4th of July for those of us that are normally on the air show ramp. So
It was.
sad. But I have a question for you, Alex. Do any of your airline partners talk about any idea of when furloughs may be over? I mean, typical furloughs can be 5 to 10 years, even in some cases. But like my best friend from flight school got his letter from United last night, and he lost his job. Any idea like how long someone like Kyle may be out of work from someone like United? Or
Yeah, you don't know it depends on the airline. It depends on how they're looking at seniority and what they do with early retirements over the next few months. You know, the travel industry we're all looking at this next holiday season. So Thanksgiving through New Year's is a critical time for our industry, and we're all sort of waiting to see what happens then. I would say at the very earliest, that my speculation and what I'm hearing from partners, things like that, is that we need to get through this holiday season, and furloughs will probably stand through that, and then we will get back into next spring. So you're probably looking at least 6 months before you see a ramp up, and that in hope. And I'm not a scientist by any means, but that would take us through the second wave, if there is, if whatever that looks like, and history would tell you that would be, you would start to see the end of this pandemic. So we're hopeful for 21. Airlines are still recruiting, so I can tell you that they're still holding virtual recruiting events through the University Aviation Association. They're still contacting us. We have students calling every single day, wanting to get on our wait list for entry. So people are seeing and hearing the same things we are, that we need to get past the 6 months, that that the next 2 quarters, let's say, are going to be pretty rough, but we're hopeful that this is a short-term issue. There are things that might come out at the end of it, of reduced crew, or just different lines, different routes that, to try and maximize route capacity. So the airlines might look different when we do all return, but regardless, we're still pretty confident of a return.
any other
Is that
questions? Your flight simulators, right? Rare birds or what?
Hey, good question and great timing. So a couple cool projects going on over at the school right now. Quietly, while we were shut down, we were actually replacing our bay doors on the hangar. So if you've ever been in our 1978 model hangar, and have been brave enough to stand under the door as it's opening, you'd appreciate the new doors that we put on. So power lift doors have been hanging new doors. That project finishes actually tomorrow. We're doing our final walkthrough. So they're big hydraulic 80-foot doors. And next week we are installing another Frasca. So before we shut down, our board approved the purchase of a second Frasca. It's a large machine. It's an actual 172 cockpit G1000 with a 220-degree IMAX screen around it. And that will get installed next week. And we also do have a Redbird. The Redbird simulator has been an amazing tool for us in, I would coin it, advanced armchair flying. So students are using that to, one, learn G1000, just get used to the buttonology of it, the flows, and then 2, to stay proficient. So we rent that out for $5 an hour to our students, just to value it at something, but also to encourage them to use it. And they are using that machine. It probably flies more than any other aircraft in our fleet. That machine is going gangbusters right now. So we're pretty happy with that Redbird. And then the Frascas, as part of our return plan, we've actually been rewriting some of our curriculum to maximize the sim time, to allow students just more access, more ease of entry, and more flight time during any sort of shutdown, whether it's weather or pandemic.
Hold on, Alex. The question was the 5 international students. They just had an announcement they'll be deporting. Was you said associate professors and yeah, yeah. Any? Did you hear anything about international professors and any instructors possibly being deported from your group? Or?
We've heard some rumblings of that. The fortunate side of our 5 international instructors are actually they're also students, and so they're on F1 visas, and their time as instructors is counted towards their learning process, and so it's almost like an internship, and so it's part of their visa that they've already been cleared for. The reason they had to stay in country is because of border closures, so they could leave, but they probably couldn't come back in, and so that's why they stayed here. But they are the timing was pretty good for them. They have graduated, and they're on what's called OPT. It's their it's essentially an internship portion of their F1 visa. So they lucked out, thankfully. Our students, we don't have any other international instructors other than those guys. Our students are limited now. If you saw the news this week, to they're limiting the number of online courses that international students can take in stateside. They can take up to 3 credits of online courses, and the remainder have to be face-to-face or hybrid. Thankfully, as an aviation program, we can meet those requirements, and we don't have any concerns so far for those students either. But it will be an interesting arena. You know, the airlines were starting to really recruit pilots from all over the world in the shortage, and I think for the next 6 months to a year at least, you know, the H-1B process is going to be pretty thin. I think it's going to be pretty difficult to get approval for an H-1B visa, more of a permanent work visa, until we get fully ramped up.
Did the drone program have to shut down?
Sorry, what was that?
Did the drone program have to shut down?
Yeah, so every program at NMC went. I've used the word shut down because we teach people how to fly airplanes, and we couldn't do it virtually. But in the second week of March, NMC went 100% online. So whatever you couldn't do virtually, teaching, working, whatever it was, just wasn't done. Thankfully, I was able to keep all my full-time staff busy with planning and policy and return and all those. The mechanics actually were the first. Our 2 mechanics were the first NMC employees to come back to campus, any of our campuses. So everyone shut down, including the UAS program, and water studies, maritime, police academy, nursing. Everybody shut down. And then slowly, as we moved up in phases in the state's plan, the first to return actually was the police academy, because they're teaching first responders. And then 2 weeks later, we were the first academic, I guess, outside of the first responder realm, allowed back on campus, which was that was a pretty good day for us. So yeah, we and the UAS program is back and running. We're operational there. Actually, a lot of our labs now, as we are a few weeks into this, a lot of our technical labs, automotive, welding, nursing, you know, we're all slowly getting back into it. I would say aviation's probably the hardest charging, just because of the demand we've had from all of our students to get back into it.
question? Biennials and check rides for the average 61 pilot out of flight school, is that still going to be held on time and still required to be on time? Do you know anything about that?
They are, yeah. All the extensions for the FA, I believe, expire. Don't quote me on this one, even though I can see I'm now looking at the little recording button up at the top of this. But there were extensions granted by the FAA through June, July. Some of them into July. At this point, most of those have expired, and we're back on track to getting everything needs to be current. I've touched base with most of our examiners, most of whom you all know, and they are giving check rides and back at it, and really excited to be working with students. They're all comfortable wearing masks, which was a relief to us, and just our policies. In addition to the FAA policies, anyone who flies with us, whether it's an examiner or a student, have to follow those policies as a public school. So we've gotten back to it. We've had 2 check rides so far, and we've soloed 2 students in the past couple weeks. So we're pretty happy to see those victories.
Anybody else? All right. We'll let you off the hot seat, Mr. Bloye. Thank you for the update, sir.
Yeah, thank you. I'm really happy to see the group coming back together, and I'd really like to see NMC a bigger part of what's going on in the hangar here, and I'll make a point to try and attend the next meeting.
Yeah, well, we would like that. So,
Okay.
alrighty, sir.
All right.
Appreciate it.
Take care, everybody. We'll see you around the airport.
Now it's back to us. We do have a few on here, Bill, so keep that up. Yeah, I think you can hear. Yeah, you got to come up.
Jim Warren, how are your fabric skills?
You're on mute, Jim.
Unmute. Oh. Turn the volume up.
Can't hear you, Jim. I don't know why we're not able to hear you.
Well, I'll call you. We had a fabric project for beach down at Fat Ultralight. So the brakes can't do it; they're just overwhelmed. So I will call you. All right, thanks.
I would, yeah, keep that up so then you can kind of see the group next. All right. Well, I do not have it. Did anybody replace their Oshkosh plans?
But all right, so the question is, what are you doing with your Oshkosh plans? Hoping.
We all know we all have a free week coming up.
I would put him on, but it's 5 minutes for the room to do my book part. Because I'm sure what's going to happen is I talked to Charlie Becker. He said, this hot stuff for this, so can't get breakfast with steroids. 70-80% of this stuff comes from that. So they're having a pretty computer over there. So I think what we do now is we're working on a way to get the monthly newsletter come on time. Be and Jim put it on the meeting page. He put take a look get on there. They've got some really great things for home builders. Fairway effect. Really pretty good about this stuff. What's going on?
NMC's folks over.